Hi friends, it's Annie Grace, author of This Naked Mind, and I am answering readers' questions. And today I have a question from Jake, actually. And Jake says, "Hi Annie, I'm 45. I've had a drink problem since I was 16. I've had a very good life and done well despite the drinking. But I've been sober now for several months with the help of your book and very much now see drinking as the enemy, not as my best friend. However, over the last few weeks, I get angry with just about everything and everyone with no reason, and I feel the sense of emptiness with no real purpose. Any ideas of how I can snap out of it?" So anger is a really interesting question because I think that when you experience something sort of yourself, you can relate to it and you can tell your own stories. And of all the things that I've experienced, depression, sadness, anxiety, anger hasn't been a big one for me. So answering this, I had to do a bit of research, and I actually had to ask some people who do kind of experience anger. And I actually went out and reached out to someone who's an anger coach. And there were some fascinating things that I learned and some techniques. So the first thing is I learned that anger is actually a secondary emotion. So what that means is it is a mask for another emotion. So for example, say you feel angry with your children because they are misbehaving and being mean to each other. And that anger, it feels very real and it's very intense. What that's actually covering up is probably some sort of parenting insecurity about what did I do wrong, that these children are not well behaved and nice people, and I feel like this is somehow my fault. So there's fear and insecurity there. And apparently, under almost every instance of anger, there's an underlying emotion that is what you're truly feeling that you're covering up with anger, which I just found fascinating. And then I started to think about it with every time, people in my family get angry or I've been angry or every instance of anger, I'm like, oh, that's true. And the interesting part is that anger is actually a socially acceptable emotion, especially for men. So it is acceptable to be angry much sooner socially than it's acceptable to show vulnerability or to cry or to feel threatened or any of these other things. So when we feel uncomfortable, when we feel vulnerable, when we feel insecure, when we feel threatened, we manifest that in anger very naturally and very easily because it's socially acceptable, because people get it. Oh, I understand being pissed. I understand being upset, whatever. And so it's really socially acceptable. So that's kind of the background that I learned, which I just found completely fascinating since I didn't know much about anger at all. But then, the advice behind that was to look then beneath for the secondary emotion and try to address whatever that is. And it will always be there. You just have to put on sort of your sleuthing skills and figure it out. And then I also got from the anger coach I talked to, I got some really tangible things. So, one is to change your state via your physical body. And this just goes back to science and neurons and how your muscles work together. That if you can change your state physically, a cold shower, a run, getting, a screaming maybe at the top of your lungs and into a pillow or something, doing something physical, releasing something physically will release that anger emotionally, which I thought is really powerful. And equally with the things that I deal with, anxiety, stuff like that, changing your physical state, even 10 jumping jacks just out of the blue absolutely does change your emotional state, which is really powerful. The second piece of advice is to realize that anger is, in a way, somewhat self-indulgent. So instead of addressing what's really going on, you are coming through with anger. And when you think about it that way, it becomes it's a bit more of a protective, selfish emotion. And just realizing that can really help you overcome it. The next one I tried with my kids, and it was like a miracle. I couldn't believe how well it worked. But basically what you do is when you're angry, you say, how mad am I on a scale of 1 to 10? And if it's an 8, then you try to turn it up to an 11. And you just try to make yourself madder. And I had my kids do this. And they were just yelling and fighting with each other. And I was like, how mad is everybody? 1 to 10. And they're like, I'm an 8, I'm a 9. And I was like, turn it up to an 11. And they just looked at each other and burst out laughing. It was the funniest thing. But apparently when you try to make yourself angrier, in a state of anger, it just dissipates. It goes away. And I'm certainly going to try this myself when I get angry next time. But Again, this is from an anger coach who said this is really useful and really worked. And then the best long-term solution that I found was mindfulness, because mindfulness and just even a breath or two a day of realizing where you are creates that space in your brain so that before that anger pours in, you just have a fraction of a second of, and just that tiny little bit of space helps you to get back completely in control of it. So anyway, I hope this helps. It was a really interesting question for me to answer, and I appreciate it. Let me ask you a question. What is better than change? Lasting change, of course. And if you've had trouble making change stick, either with alcohol or in any other area of your life, you are in for a treat. I created the 100 Days of Lasting Change to ensure that we don't just change for a moment, but we truly transform for a lifetime. And this program is so close to my heart. Thousands of people have been through it and their results are incredible. But don't take my word for it. Check it out at thisnakedmind.com/100 days. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.